and we are back with this securing Java applications with a key store. And in the last short, we went through and looked at this class to create a AES key, and then we had a little test here, and that's what I'm showing here. So we're starting off where we left off there, and for this short, we're going to actually create the key store and then put the key that we've created into that key store so we can save it off for later encryption operations that we want to do. So let's go ahead, and what I like to do is I like to actually create a little key store manager that'll do things like create the key store, do some encryption on the key store, but things around the key store that just allow you to manipulate where it's created, how it's used, and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And so I'm just going to go ahead and create a new class. I'm going to call it key store. Manager. Let's go ahead and finish that up. Let Eclipse create our class. And I'm going to go ahead and put in a default constructor here. We'll probably be using it later, so we might as well go ahead and start it now. Now I'm going to create this function that is method, or whatever you want to call it, that's going to actually look and see, is there a key store there? If it's not, it's going to create a key store. Is there going to be a key in it? If there's not, I'm going to go ahead and put a key in it. So let's go ahead and create that method. Okay, so now we have this method here that does a couple of things. First, it creates a key store instance, and we're going to use pkcs12. Of course, we're going to make the assumption that we have the right key store down later, but then we're going to create a file, and that's just the parameter that we've passed in. So the parameters we have are the alias for the key store, the file name that the key store is actually going to be in the operating system, and then what the password is we're going to use. So we have the file, we have the instance of the key store, and we're going to just check, is the file, does it exist? That means, have we run across this sort of create method, sort of create function that we have before? And as I said earlier, the create and store is really not a name I would use in production. I would more or less maybe put some of this stuff in the constructor to automatically generate a key store, or whatever the situation arises that it's not real important for this demonstration. And then we're going to say if the file is there. Well, it's not there, so this line here actually creates an empty key store, and so we're just going to do a key store load, and null, which is the parameter, there's no input that we have, we just want it to be blank, but we do want to create it with a password. If you pass null in here, and I've seen people do this before, it just throws an exception, and they don't understand why they can't create an empty key store without a password, and that's why it just crashes on a null string inside the key store load function. Then, since the file didn't exist, I'm going to go ahead and write that file out using the file that I created from the key store file name. And then I'm just going to tell the key store, hey, save yourself on this output stream with the same password again. Otherwise, this file was actually there, so I'm going to go ahead and load it into the key store manager so that the next time where we have saved off any AES keys before, I can bring them back in and use the same keys, because I've probably used those keys in some situation to encrypt some data or anything like that, and if I don't reload the same key, I'm not going to be able to recover that encrypted data. The next thing is that I'm going to look inside the key store and make sure that there's actually an alias with the key store in there. So in this condition, it says, hey, it's not there's no alias in there. So I'm going to say, all right, well, I'm going to have to create a new instance of my a new key, and I use the class that we generated last time in the security short, and then I'm just going to set the entry. Now the entry for setting in a key store is you want to tell it the alias, and then you're going to want to use these sort of helper functions that are on the key store class itself to tell it, hey, you're giving it an instance of a secret key. So you're going to create a new secret key entry for the key store with the secret key you just created right here. And then again, you're going to use the password protection policy, and you're going to just go ahead and pass the password in that you use as a parameter to your function, and that's going to go ahead and set up a key store now that has an entry with the AES key in it. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a file output stream, and I'm going to write the key store to that stream again. Now you'll see, you might notice some redundance here. I didn't really need to write it here if I wrote it again here, but sometimes you could have maybe crashed in between here and actually created the store, but then did not create the file. I'm also going to be a good little programmer here, and I'm going to close my file streams. So now that we have these functions created, let's go ahead and create a test for it. And we'll do that by, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to copy this test that's already in here and just paste it right in the same test directory. And I'm going to call it KeyStore Manager Test. So if we go into the KeyStore Manager Test, now you see we have a test with just a bogus function here. But I'm going to create a test now that actually instantiates the key store. So let's go ahead and create that test now. Okay, so now we have this test. It's like 3 lines of code. Of course, you got to try catch in here because you've thrown a bunch of exceptions from the create method itself. And so we're just going to create an instance of the key store manager. We're going to do this, use the system property to say, okay, let's start in my home directory, and then in a data directory in a key store. We're going to use that as our file name, and then we're going to call the create method that we just wrote, create key store with AES key. We're going to tell it the alias is going to be an AES key. The key store name is right here above where we just created it. And then we're going to do some long password. Obviously, you're going to want to choose a good password to get this done. So let's go out now and create that data directory that we need in order to do this. And I'm going to say clear. You can see I've been doing some testing here before, but we're going to do an ls here. You're going to see there's no data directory, so I'm going to make a directory. And I'm going to do an ls on the data directory, and you're going to see that it's empty. So we're going to go back to the program here, and I'm going to run this test, and I'm going to say run as unit test. Must not have had it highlighted. There we go. Run as unit test. Oh, it's asking me to save, so I'll go ahead and save that. And it looked like the test passed. So let's go out into the operating system again, and let's do an ls on the data directory. Yeah, that's good. We see that we have a key store there. I'm going to go cd to data, and now I'm going to actually use the key tool to test this out. Key tool -l, or list rather. I'm going to do a -key store. And that's keystore.jks. And I'm going to do a -store pass and tell it that it was some long password. And if I run that command, I see that in fact I do have a key store. It's a Sun Java key store with a PKCS12 type. And you're going to see one alias in there, and that is the AES key that we just created in our test. And so that'll do it. Thank you for listening, and look forward to seeing you in future shorts where I'll actually be taking these keys and actually maybe encrypting some data and doing some other stuff and creating a little just, play around application with the key store, and eventually doing some attacks against the key store for choosing bad passwords and things like that. Thank you.